I also want to bring into the conversation now Enia Krivine. She is the senior director of FDD's Israel program and National Security Network. Now, the FDD is the foundation for the defense of democracies. Enia, good morning. Good to have you on today.
Good to see you again, Carel.
Just to provide some more context for our viewers, you are actually joining us live from Haifa in Israel right now. And I just want to start with this. Then I asked of the expert that we had earlier on today, he was in Jerusalem. What can you tell us about the situation on the ground in Israel, how the population there is reacting, and really kind of how everyone is preparing given these recent developments?
Sure, Carel. Thanks again for having me. So, as you know, and your viewers probably know by now, Saturday morning Israel time, the whole nation was alerted that an operation had been launched against Iran. At first, no one was sure what that looked like exactly, but very soon after, details began emerging that it was a joint US and Israel action. And there was some sort of operation happening against Iran. And what that message sends to people living in Israel is that this is going to turn into a hot conflict very quickly. People need to stay close to their shelters, make sure they know where their family are at all time, and watch the news. And the Home Front Command, which is the national organization that works with the IDF to make sure that people are updated as to different safety concerns on a minute-by-minute basis. So we've been on high alert. There have been hundreds of missiles and payloads launched at Israel. We're not sure exactly how many have come from Iran directly, how many may have been Houthis or other regional actors, but it definitely feels like a period of high alert and that Israel is at war.
So, Enia, also, we have been posing some questions, or really posed one question to our viewers, which is to have them send us questions about what they want to know, given those strikes against Iran. So I want to bring this one up first. Now, you basically did touch on it within the first answer, but Wendy H. says this, can we get some sort of update on Israel? I just talked with my family there in Haifa, and they are scared. Any update on this? So obviously you let us know kind of the status, the overall case for civilians there in Israel, but specifically in Haifa, just so we can get this question answered for Wendy. And again, that is where you are joining us. What would you be able to share with her? And also, are we expecting an update from the IDF or the Prime Minister at some point today?
So for your viewer in Haifa, I mean, that's very close to where I am. And we have been receiving alerts on a pretty consistent basis. This seems to be the MO of the Iranians when there is a hot conflict. And this is the fourth that Israel has gone with Iran since the October 7th war broke out and the direct conflict between Israel and Iran began happening. So this is the fourth round. Israelis are accustomed to that. It looks like you have a view of Haifa there. Now, Haifa is very strategic for the Iranians because it's one of Israel's biggest ports, and it's also has military installations that you can see there on the water. So it is traditionally been a target, but again, we're in a slight lull as far as rockets go right now. We don't know what is will be coming in hours to come. But we do know that Iran has several thousand rockets still at their fingertips that they can launch. So there's a little bit of a conversation going on between the experts as far as what capabilities Iran has left and whether the regime sees itself as an existential threat, whether it really believes that this is its last sort of opportunity to lash out. And if that is the case, it could get potentially worse in the coming hours and days.
So this is a live look out of there in Haifa, Enia, that you pointed out correctly here, just to give our viewers that perspective of what this scene and landscape looks like there in Israel. Want to take us back out to the live images that we have over in Pakistan. This is something that we are following very closely here, as we know that protesters are clashing with law enforcement. But Enia, going off of the last question, the last answer that you gave, I want to talk about possibly what's going to happen going forward. So we have another viewer question here, this time from Laura. And she says this, will most terrorist groups now be weakened because of the strikes and toppling of the Iranian regime? And of course, when we talk terrorist groups, she's talking about these proxies, Hamas, for example, and Hezbollah would be another.
So there's no doubt that the radical Shiite militias that are controlled by Iran will be significantly degraded if the regime falls. But again, looking forward to what the fall of the regime could look like, we know now for a fact, it's been reported on Iranian state television that Khamenei, the supreme leader, was killed and targeted by either US or Israel this morning and killed in one of his bunkers. Apparently, he was having a meeting with other senior leaders. So we know for a fact that the head of the regime is dead, but there are people underneath him. And unfortunately, you can't destroy a whole apparatus that is in power for a half a century with one series of strikes. This is an apparatus that runs deep and wide in the country. So I think it's too early to talk about regime change. But certainly this devastating blow, this elimination of the top thinkers and strategists in the regime is going to have a trickle-down effect to the Shiite militias. Now, of course, when you talk about radical Islamist terror, you have a rainbow of different actors. You have everything from Shiite to Shiite to Sunni and everything in between. So when you talk about will the terrorist organizations be weakened, you were talking about the Iranian brand of terrorist organizations, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, and dozens of others throughout the region. Yes, this weekend has dealt them a fatal blow.
As we're following breaking news developments from these live images that we have on the screen, I also want to bring us out to a social media post courtesy of the Associated Press. So, Enia, as you know, as our viewers know, we are going 24 hours right now just to follow all of these developments. And this is the latest one from the AP. It says breaking massive explosion strikes Iran's capital as the Israeli military says it is targeting the heart of the city. Strategically here, and also the fact that it is coordinating closely with the U.S., when we look at the next steps for Israel and possibly what their military are going to be doing, what are they focused on within the next several hours?
So, if I would be advising the Israeli spokesperson unit, I would have advised against this type of language. Targeting the heart of the city could easily be misinterpreted. What Israelis have made clear over and over again, and I'm afraid this kind of statement defeats the primary and central messaging, is that this war is not against the Iranian people. As you probably know, Carel, before this Islamist regime took over in 1979, Israel and the Persian people, Israel and the country of Iran, had very strong ties dating back hundreds of years. So this, with the Jewish people in the Persian Empire, Jews had historically had lived in Tehran and throughout Iran. They still do today. And there were very close ties between the country before this Islamist regime took over. So when I see this statement by the IDF, unfortunately, I'm a little bit disappointed, because what the broader messaging has been about, and what the directly from Netanyahu and all the way down through the system, is this is not a war against the Iranian people. And in Iran, the regime is very unpopular. We try to get good polling, it's hard, but we are assuming that there's only between about 15 to 20% support for this regime in this country of about 100 million people, over 100 million people. So I don't love this statement. I think that probably what they were trying to say is they're going after assets that are in the heart of the country, that are the lifeblood of the country, that are the controlling apparatus of the regime. And that's what I would interpret that statement to mean.
I think that going off of that, this next viewer question fits in well. So this one is courtesy of Lily A. Enia. She says, if Iranian leaders have been eliminated, why is Iran still retaliating? I'm going to assume that's what she means by this question. And it's a very good question, because, when you think about the head of an organization being taken out, it's kind of hard to understand how it continues to operate as if there is a structure. So what would be your answer to this question?
So I think that, again, this regime has been in power and pretty much unchallenged for a half a century, since 1979. And its apparatus is huge. There are thousands of people that support and hold up and benefit from this regime. So unfortunately, I don't think that one military operation, no matter how successful, is going to topple the regime. what the US, Donald Trump, and Israel have been saying is that it is up to the Iranian people to take hold of their country, to get their country back. And as you remember, Carel, about 6 weeks to 2 months ago, there were these massive demonstrations by the Iranian people that were largely about economic issues. There have been terrible economic strife in the country. The US has sanctioned Iran over the years to try and bring them to the negotiating table and relinquish their nuclear program. And it has caused immense pressure on the economy. And primarily for those reasons, there were these massive demonstrations about 6 weeks ago that were not only primarily because of the economy, but not only because of the economy. There were also elements of people that wanted to see an end to the regime, that wanted free and fair elections, that wanted freedom. You remember the Women Life Freedom campaign, which was in response to these draconian measures where women were beaten for immodesty, for revealing their hair, for example. So there is this groundswell and sense of wanting to overthrow this regime, but the regime is wide and it is deep and it is going to be very hard to dismantle. So, when we were seeing these demonstrations and unknown thousands of Iranian people were killed by the regime, Donald Trump said help is on its way. And for 2 months, it wasn't clear that the help was going to come. And that's really what this operation is about this weekend. It's about help coming to the Iranian people and giving them an opportunity to take their country back.
We have another viewer question here from Steve Brewer. This one kind of looking at bigger picture and possibly any kind of catastrophic developments. But he asked, what are the chances of a nuclear strike from Iran or on Iran during this conflict?
So I would say the chances are slim to none. This whole conflict is about preventing a nuclear war. That is what this is about. That is what the US sanctions have been about. That is what the US and Israel training and preparing for this operation is about. Is it about deterring Iran from rushing to a bomb? So certainly in June of 2025 and during the 12-day war, when we saw a similar operation that was led by Israel with the knowledge of the United States. And then towards the end, the United States came in with their massive B-2 bombers that fly really, really high in the sky and aren't really susceptible to any type of weapon systems that Iran has, the B-2 bombers. And they took out some of Iran's nuclear weapons facilities that were considered to be out of reach. There was an understanding that they were untouchable. And the B-2 bombers came in the June war of 2025, and they really degraded those sites. So that, unfortunately, after that operation in June, Iran still wasn't prepared to give up its nuclear ambitions. And that's what you saw with these ongoing negotiations between the Trump administration and Iran. You saw the Trump administration trying with carrots and sticks to get them to abandon these nuclear aspirations. And ultimately, the Iranians just were not willing to come to the table. They were not willing to say, we are going to join the world order. We want to re-enter the community of nations, and we want to become a normal actor. We want to have an economy, and we want to provide for our people, and we want to go back to being the Persian power that we used to be before the Islamic regime took over, and they refused. So that's what you're seeing. You're seeing this Israeli and U.S. operation to try and prevent them from becoming a nuclear power, to try and prevent a future nuclear war.
And yeah, I think that brings us to this next question. It's a more forward-looking one. And with this viewer question, and my producer also had a question that I thought was interesting. So the viewer Yama asked this: how long is the war expected to continue? If successful, what would this transfer of power look like there in Iran? And then kind of going off of this, my producer asked me, is there a time period that a conflict like this would have to last for it to be considered a war?
So these are all great questions. Let me try and tackle them one by one. So the war is expected I don't anticipate this war being particularly long, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that the amount of firepower that the U.S. has amassed in the region and the determination of the Israeli military that we've seen in the past 2 days with thousands of targets have been hit. I don't think that Iran can withstand this much longer. They simply don't have the sophisticated military They are not a peer with Israel or the US. They are completely outgunned and will be outmaneuvered very quickly. So I don't imagine this going on for too long. As far as the viewers' other questions, look, the goal here is to try and bring up, to encourage, to empower, to enable the Iranian people to change their government. Again, 50 years this regime has been in power. 50 years this regime has built its apparatus of controlling and subverting its people. And now the people of Iran have an opportunity, with the help of the United States, with the help of the IDF, to overthrow their government, to overthrow the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and the besieged, their state police, these people that have the blood of thousands, if not tens of thousands of Iranians on their hands, and not to mention the blood of Americans and Israelis on their hands. I mean, let's not forget, Carel, that during Operation Iraqi Freedom, it's estimated that 1 in 6 US soldiers that were killed with Iranian weapons and by Iranian militias. So this is an imperative for the US. Our generals, our US generals that are at the helm now, that were there during Iraqi Freedom, that lost friends and loved ones and sent people home to their families who were, who would be disabled for life because of these Iranian munitions, understand that this is not a regime that should remain in power, and that the Iranian people, ultimately it will be up to them in order to take their government back.
Enia Krivine, Senior Director of the Israel Program and National Security Network at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much for joining us here at Live Now from Fox as we are following all of these developments. Thank you for answering some of the viewer questions. There's still so much more that we can talk about, so we look forward to checking in with you soon, because it's a story that we're going to continue to follow.
Thanks for having me, as always, Carel.
Of course. We'll talk soon.